residual cough that goes along with that little situation. So she wasn't going to be able to get through the show today. But fear not. It's even wackier now because she's not here, and I am here with Sue, the real Sue Brinkman, and we will get into some of that conversation a little bit later, but wanted to remind you of a couple of things. I think Johnnette will still be in Nebraska this weekend. She's doing much better this afternoon, so I think by tomorrow she should be on the mend. But Saturday at Our Lady of Good Counsel Retreat House there in Waverly, Nebraska, outside of Lincoln, in the Diocese of Lincoln, she'll be guiding a site. So I don't understand how silent retreat and her giving 5 talks work together exactly, but that's how they're doing it. But it'll be a tremendous day for everybody. So if you're planning on attending, or you can check out their website, Our Lady of Good Counsel Retreat House in Waverly, and see if there's any space available if you could get yourself there for that event. And there's a book study going on, and I'll let the real Sue Brinkman talk about that coming up. But they're in the middle of it. I think they're maybe 3 weeks in, so it might be too late for this one, but she may have details on one upcoming. But if you just go to womenofgrace.com and click on the events tab there, it'll give you all the information of everything that is coming up. Jeff, do you have the music cued and ready to go for an early arrival? Can you play that? Hit it. Well, yeah, I like that music too, but there we go. We're going to bring an early arrival in the first segment of The Real Sue Brinkman. And this is the first Wacky Wednesday of October. And while October is a Marian month, it's the month of the Most Holy Rosary. Unfortunately, Susie Q, it is the month of some diabolical stuff too, huh?
Oh my goodness. It just never stops, Jack. I'll tell you, it's wacky, wacky, wacky out there. People are falling for everything. And that's because we don't know our faith. If only we would learn this beautiful faith, we would not be snookered so easily by these really these charlatans and con artists that are out there on the internet. Be very careful what you're reading out there. Very, very careful. And if it sounds strange, it is strange. Stay away from it.
There's no doubt about it. If you've got a question about anything that you have run across that didn't seem quite right to you, and you want to ask Sue about it, I don't know of anyone who is more well-read on the subject of the occult and things of that nature, the whole New Age movement, than Sue Brinkman. Give us a call at 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. If you're outside the United States and Canada, let me tell you something. There's wacky stuff going on there too. That number is 1-205-271-2985. And we'll even put you straight to the front of the line at 1-205-271-2985. Or you can always send us an email. That email is womenofgrace@ewtn.com. I am Jack Williams, sitting in for my wife, Johnnette, today. Jeff Burson producing the programming and handling our social media efforts. So if you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook Live, I'm sorry that I am not as easy on the eyes as my wife is, but I am here nonetheless. Sue Brinkman will have to pick up the slack in that regard. And if you call the program, Matt Gubensky will take your phone call. So be sure you, as Johnnette says, give a big howdy hey to Matt when you call him. And right now, he has his feet up on the desk. He has his fingers interlocked behind his head, and he's not doing anything. So please pick up the phone and give us a call at 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. I know we have a couple of things that you want to get to a little bit later in the program, Sue, but first of all, talk about the current book study. Is it too late for anybody to join? And if it is too late for anybody to join, what is on the horizon in the book study world?
Well, it is kind of late at this point because you would have to read 4 up to 5 chapters. And this is heavy reading now. This is Fire Within by the late Father Thomas Dubay. And it really delves into the interior life, all the do's and don'ts of the interior life. We're going to get into the 7 mansions of the soul. We're going to get into the different forms of prayer. the Dark Nights of the Soul. We're really going to delve deep into it. We have a good time doing it. We have a wonderful time. The book study is very lively. We meet once a week on Monday nights from 7 to 8:30, and we just talk about it. We talk about our week's assignment, and it's a beautiful way to learn about Catholic mysticism. We're flooded with all this Oriental stuff. You can learn centering prayer and transcendental meditation. You can learn all these different kinds of things, mindfulness, but you can't learn Christian mysticism anywhere. And this book lays it out for you, and all the glory of the church and the teachings of the church, according to the two great mystical doctors of the church, John of the Cross and Teresa of Avila. That's who he's writing about, and he's making their writings a lot more understandable to people. He's explaining what they're saying. So anybody out there who's
He
tried
is
to
so
read that
accessible.
stuff, he is, and anyone who's out there who tried to read those two saints and got frustrated, said, "Oh, I just don't understand it." They would really enjoy the book Fire Within by Thomas Dubay. So, and on the horizon would be, I'm hoping, Carrie Gress's new book, The End
Mm.
of Woman, which is
Speaking of
really
somebody who
something.
can make difficult topics accessible.
Yes, yes, she really does. It's how smashing the patriarchy has destroyed us. And it really is a tremendous book. We're going to just delve into that, I'm hoping, sometime shortly after the new year begins. So, because this one with Fire Within is probably going to take us until November to finish this book. But anyway, that's on the horizon for us. And we're always coming up with with new titles. We have book studies pretty much constantly going on through the year. So if you want to join us, we're a great group of people. I'm not going to say we're wacky because we're not that wacky. We're not as wacky as we are on Wednesdays. Let's put it that way. These are the Mondays, the Monday girls. But and guys, you don't have to be a woman to sign up for their book study. We've had many men join our book studies, and they've really gotten a lot out of the studies. So anyway, that's what's going on in book study world right now, Jack.
Awesome. So straight ahead, we're going to talk about probably, we may have some questions about the month of October with regard to the New Age and the occult. Sue's got some information on planets. Can the planets affect us as human beings? Let me give you a sneak preview. I don't think so. And then also Sue's got some info on an occult psychologist who's making some incredible claims, incredibly ridiculous claims that she's going to want to alert you to. But we want to hear from you. Pick up the phone, 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. Stay tuned.
This is Father Brian Milady. Do you have any questions about the Catholic faith? Then join me on Open Line Thursday tomorrow afternoon at 3 Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Saints are the heroes of the Catholic faith. They serve as examples for all Catholics, showing us how to lead a more satisfying, more spiritual life in communion with our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. View our comprehensive documentation of saints who serve as theologians and doctors of the Church. Visit EWTN.com and click Catholicism. EWTN is the Global Catholic Network.
This is Life Issues with Brad Mattis, president of Life Issues Institute.
Peter Singer, a bioethicist from Princeton University, is often accused of lacking ethics. This will give critics even more ammunition against him. Singer weighed in on artificial intelligence, saying if AI ever became sentient or self-aware, turning it off would be equal to killing a being that possesses a high moral value. Singer said, all things being equal, we should not switch it off if it has become self-aware. This is the man that actually believes HIV vaccines should have been tested on cognitively disabled humans instead of chimpanzees. Terminology is important here. You can destroy AI by turning it off because it's a thing. Humans aren't things but created in God's image. Ending our lives isn't destroying them, it's killing. A significant difference.
Follow us on social media at Life Issues Institute.
Jesus revealed 12 promises for those who honor His Sacred Heart. Learn what these promises mean for you with our free ebook. Visit EWTN.com, Seasons and Feast Days, and click on Sacred Heart of Jesus.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Well, now we know Jeff Burson can be pressured. uh, into playing the Sue Brinkman Wacky Wednesday theme music for a second time in one program. So we've learned something about producer man extraordinaire, Mr. Jeff Burson, today. If you'd like to be part of the program, we want to hear from you. Pick up the phone and give us a call at 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. And Sue, we'll pull back the curtain a little bit here on EWTN Radio Time, but we have these live reads that we like to promote things so people know what's going on at EWTN and especially with EWTN Radio. And these are presented to us on a schedule so that we're not talking about the same thing all the time. And October, as most of our listeners know, is the month of the Holy Rosary. That is the monthly one of the monthly themes for the month of October, and that's what's on the sheet that the aforementioned producer extraordinaire Jeff Burson handed me today. But I have absolutely no idea what else I'm supposed to say about that because it's not on the sheet that has all that information on it. So it's pray the Rosary. If you don't pray it every day, start praying it every day now. If you don't pray it at all, pray it occasionally. More than what you're doing now is what you ought to be striving for. Anything more than what you're doing now. And that will keep you from being a victim of some of the stuff we talk about on Wacky Wednesday. All right, Sue, before we dive into this planet discussion, let's go to Julie. She is a first-time caller in Atlanta, Georgia, listening on Sirius XM Channel 130. Julie, you are on with the real Sue Brinkman.
Hi, Sue. Good morning. Just a question
Good
on
morning.
your thoughts regarding the 3 days of darkness. I've heard it a lot in conservative circles, especially, and folks that have beeswax candles and tarps for their windows, just making all kinds of preparations to stay indoors, and something about the anniversary of Fatima here again in October. So would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Are you keeping bees now, Sue?
No, I'm not
on the back
actually.
40?
I'm
No.
not, I'm not keeping those beeswax candles. I do not have any of them in my house. As a matter of fact, I don't have any. The 3 days of darkness is not actually teaching of the church. There really isn't any reference to the 3 days of darkness in any approved apparition. This is all coming from mystics that are just calling themselves mystics. They've not been approved. So I don't put much stock in that. I don't have beeswax candles, as I said. I just leave that up to the Lord. As far as preparing for the end time, this is something we all need to do. Jesus predicted the end time several times in Scripture. He did predict the end time. We do know that the end of time is coming. We do not know when. He doesn't even know when. That's what he told us, right? We don't know when that's going to happen. And but there is one end time that we all know is going to happen, and that's our own end time. You're going to have an end time. And instead of running around buying beeswax candles, what we really need to be doing is preparing ourselves for our own end time, because we're going to see that long before we're going to see this so-called 3 days of darkness that nobody really can account for. There's really no saints who actually said it. Anna Marie Taigi, they're claiming that she said the most about it. There's problems with some of the quotes that people have come up with in that. They say Saint Padre Pio, but in his writings, we really can't find a lot from him on that. So they're beginning now to attribute it to older saints, Saint Teresa of Avila, as I said, Saint Patrick, Hildegard, even though they really made no predictions about it at all. So a lot of this stuff, you got to be really careful of it. I'm glad you brought it up. I think it's a great question, Julie, because it's out there and people are believing it. And one of the reasons why it has gotten so big is because of the pandemic. And the reason I say that is because anytime there's any kind of social unrest like that, or some kind of big event that happened, for most of us, nothing like that ever happened in our lives before, where we were isolated in our homes and stuff. People tend to believe stuff like this. This is where it's people are thinking, oh, it's the end of the world. Like this happened in the turn of the century between 999 and the year 1000. And every time a millennium changes, that happens. All of a sudden, you get all these things coming out about the end of the world. Remember Y2K when we were when we were, yeah, remember that? I mean, this is just something like sociologists have said that you can really trace it back and say, hey, it always happens. People just get freaked out, and it's a blooming. It's a time for these self-made prophets to bloom and get out there and start to push all this information, even though, like I said, the church does not. It's not a church teaching. 3 Days of Darkness is not a church teaching.
Does that help, Julie?
I think it does. I think it's easy for people to latch onto, like you said, because of COVID, but also because these are very dark times for our church. People are worried about the synod. They're worried about what they're seeing in our culture, socially, politically, spiritually, and I think it's the fear factor that's just taken over. But thank you for taking my call.
Thank you for that, Julie. That was a great question.
God bless you, Julie. Thanks so much for the call today. That opens up a line for you at 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. Sue, one of the things that drives me crazy is when people will accuse the church of, they'll take a certain church feast or a certain church liturgical season or a certain church holiday, and they'll say that the church co-opted that from some pre-existing pagan holiday, to which I immediately say, hooray! If that is what happened, hallelujah. Why do we have a problem with that? So that happens with Halloween and all this other stuff. And, there are certainly a lot of nefarious things that go on that surround the Halloween date, All Hallows Eve, which Holy Mother Church has certainly, with the feasts of All Souls and All Saints, has certainly, what's the word I'm looking for, has redeemed to a certain extent. But there is still a lot of stuff, and I know you take precautions with some of your pets and other things for some of the stuff that does go on around Halloween.
Yeah. I have 2 black and white cats. I have tuxedo cats, and they love black cats. There's all kinds of vicious things that are done to animals around that time of year. So I always tell people keep your animals indoors if you can, especially on mischief night, the night before Halloween. That's really when they get out there and they do it. And a lot of occult stuff is going on out there. A lot of covens that might be near you, and they're out there. Trust me, it would frighten you if you knew how many of them were out there and how close they were to your home. And different warlocks and that kind of thing. They get off on that. That's just their evening to do all these kind of things. So you got to be very careful around Halloween. But Halloween, it doesn't have anything to do with paganism other than the date, and it actually was established as the Feast of All Saints was established in the 4th century, right? It was established by the early Christians to commemorate the martyrs. That's what it's all about. And originally it was celebrated on May 13th, but then it was changed on November 1st in the 9th century by Pope Gregory. That just happened to have been the same night that there were a lot of other pagan celebrations, and that's how it kind of got mixed up in there with it. Now, go ahead.
Yep. So I was going to say that identifying evil is one thing, but doing something about it is a whole nother thing. And I wanted to go to Esperanza, who is on the phone from Flowery Branch, Georgia, with us, listening on the Amazon Echo. Esperanza, you are on with Sue Brinkman.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call.
Good morning.
And my question is also about Halloween. I try to teach my kids in the class, as a catechist, that is Hallows Eve. However, out there, Halloween everywhere. What is the proper way for us to Catholic to do on that day? I normally put a pumpkin because I have a Blessed Virgin Mary outside in my yard. What is the best way? That is the proper way to celebrate as Catholic.
I say to take it back. It's our holiday. We're the ones who came up with that. Halloween, that's the Eve of All Saints. That's ours. And if you want to dress up for Halloween, dress up in a way that's devotional. Even skulls have a meaning. They have historically been, recalled our mortality, reminding us to be holy because we're destined for judgment. there's a lot of different things that we could be dressing our children up as rather than these vampires and the living dead. What do you call those? The people who come back from
Zombies.
the zombies, the zombie apocalypse and stuff. You don't have to dress your children up that way to celebrate Catholic teaching on Halloween. They can be dressed up as saints. There's wonderful saints out there, but we shouldn't be doing uh, any kind of costumes that are celebrating death, celebrating evil, like dressing their children up as witches. We don't want to do stuff like that because that celebrates those things. And we don't want to celebrate anything that's occult and that's evil. But I say take it back. Take back Halloween. It doesn't have to be. And I have noticed just in my neighborhood that the costumes have become a lot tamer in the last few years. I'm not really seeing all those zombies and people with blood all over their faces and stuff like that. I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing little girls dressed as ballerinas and princesses the way they're supposed to, and nice things like that. And dressing as the boys dressing as, maybe one of their Superman or Spider-Man or something like that. So hopefully that trend will continue. But Halloween should not be celebrating evil. And that's really what it has been doing. And it's a trend. It's become a very popular holiday, by the way, very popular. It's one of the top selling now for other than Christmas is Halloween.
Oh, it comes
Because
early.
people
and
are
these costume shops open earlier every year.
Yep, they do. And they're, a lot of them are evil. Just don't participate in that aspect of it. But I say, hey, take it back. It's ours.
How's that, Esperanza?
That's perfect. Thank you. I'm agree. We need to take it back.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the phone call. We appreciate it. They're in the great state of Georgia. 833-288-EWTN. That's our toll-free number. Give us a call at 833-288-3986. Tammy's watching us on Facebook Live. She says, I'm a new convert. Our church is having a blessing of the animals during St. Francis's feast day, which is today. Is this a superstition? Just trying to understand.
Oh my goodness, no, it's not a superstition. Absolutely have your animal blessed. A blessing is not a superstitious act. It is something that you definitely want to have. It's invoking God's favor upon a person. It's definitely it's a sacramental. A blessing is a sacramental. So absolutely do that. My parish does it every year on October the 4th, and people line up out there with their animals, having their animals blessed. And I've done it myself. Only, as I said, I have cats, so that's not fun, especially trying to get them into carriers. You actually end up scratched up and all that kind of stuff. But I took them down there once, and once in their life they have been blessed. But that is not a superstition at all, and it's a wonderful practice. Anytime you have a chance to have a blessing, get a blessing. Get a blessing. Before I take a trip, I always go up to Father after Mass and say, can I have a blessing? I'm going on a trip. At the end of every Mass, we are given blessings. These are very important sacramentals that we should participate in whenever possible. But that's a great question, Tammy. Thank you for that.
833-288-EWTN. That's our toll-free number, 833-288-3986. So what is up with this planet nonsense, Sue?
Well, somebody wrote and asked and said, the notion of the planets and their location in the universe at any given time can have an impact on human life, from influencing our personalities to predicting the future. But, that's the basis of astrology. But is that true? And the short answer is no. Not by a long shot, Jack.
So
Should
I sell my telescope?
Yeah, really. No, you can look and enjoy these wonderful, these beautiful planets. You can absolutely enjoy them. But there's no evidence. It's not possible for planets to affect us because they're too far away. The moon affects us, and some planets affect us, like the sun, right? They have solar flares.
Mm-hmm.
That causes all kinds of disturbances in satellite communication. The moon causes ocean tides and solar wind. And also that stunning aurora borealis in the sky. The seasons, these we know about. This is all what can happen. But definitely planets cannot. They are simply too far away to have any impact on us. There's only four forces of nature. There's gravity, electromagnetism, then there's what's known as the strong nuclear force and the weak nuclear force. And the problem is that all of those forces die off with distance. Mm-hmm. So in order to better understand that, a nanometer, right? Most of those forces can only affect us within a few nanometers. A nanometer is 1/1000th of a meter. So to get a visual of that, consider that there is 25 million nanometers in an inch. So it's not, in other words, planets are so far away that it's not even remotely possible that they would have an impact on us at all. So, and this is from physicists and mathematicians. So these guys, they're looking at it from a whole different point of view. But astrology, we know, is not a science. Astronomy is a science.
Yeah, big difference
astrology.
between astronomy and astrology.
Absolutely. And that's really where we get confused a lot of times. But that astrology is based on the fact that at the time of your birth, the planets were in a certain location, and this is all going to impact your personality, your future, what's going to happen to you. And that is all made up. That is all a construct of a Babylonian occult art, because that's what astrology is. That's where it comes from, Babylonia. It's very ancient. So people have been falling for it. I call it the greatest scam known to humankind, is astrology, because it's gone on and on and on and on and on since ancient times. People have believed in this. And unfortunately, now that we have modern science and that we can really measure this stuff, it's simply not true. In fact, they don't even bother, science doesn't even bother to investigate it anymore, because there have been so many studies done. And one mathematician that I wrote about on this blog that's on newage.womenofgrace.com, he even said that the kind of investigations done are so simple. He said now they're showing up in middle school science fair projects, because it's not that difficult to come up with that. It's really not that hard. So anyway, if you really are putting a lot of stock in astrology, you really want to stop and think that over.
Yeah.
Because astrology is really not based on anything other than what humans have made up. We have literally made it up.
And I think sometimes we're more prone to movements like this being formed around things that don't have a lot of empirical evidence, and I think they like it that way, because there's less to solidly disprove them, just as much as there's less than solid proof of what they're saying.
Exactly. And it also gives them a lot of room to make up more stuff.
There you go.
That just like chi, chi, the universal life force energy that nobody's ever been able to substantiate. We've been looking for it since the time of Sir Isaac Newton. But look at all the stuff out there, from acupuncture to Reiki, that's based on this universal life form that doesn't exist.
Straight ahead, we'll talk to Lynn in Cleveland, Ohio, Wilma in Nova Scotia, and we've got plenty of time for your calls as well. 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. It's Women of Grace on EWTN Radio.
He is honored as the newest doctor of the Church with the title Doctor of Unity.
Matthew Bunsen and the Doctors of the Church.
A 2nd century bishop, theologian, and martyr, St. Irenaeus of Lyon was a fierce defender of the faith against the heresy of Gnosticism. He reminded Catholics of every century that heresy cloaks itself in appealing guise, but that the antidote is a sound teaching handed down by the apostles.
To find out more, visit EWTN.com and click on Catholicism.
Hi, I'm Doug Keck. This is an EWTN Bookmark Brief, speaking with the one and only Raymond Arroyo about something very new and special, his Christmas CD, Merry and Bright. So, Raymond, what prompted this?
Well, this came as a result of our viewers over many years seeing the Christmas special on the world over and asking me, do you want to do a CD? Please do a CD. Well, I finally did a CD. It's Christmas Merry and Bright, 20 pieces, Doug. We did original arrangements of some classic, beautiful Christmas hymns, carols, as well as some contemporary classics. Mm-hmm. The album's a lot of fun for families, and I think for anybody on a long car ride. It is a blast.
Okay, well, thanks. Raymond Arroyo, his Christmas Merry and
Christmas.
Bright CD. Of course, Eternal Music, available through the Eternal Word. Religious catalog, of course. EWTNRC.com for all things Catholic. I'm Doug Keck. Thanks for stopping by. Hope to see you next time.
The Holy Father's prayer intention for the month of October is the Synod. We pray for the Church that she may adopt listening and dialogue as a lifestyle at every level and allow herself to be guided by the Holy Spirit towards the peripheries of the world.
Hi, this is Dr. David Anders. Do you have questions about the Catholic faith? Get the answers on Call to Communion, coming up this afternoon, 2 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio. Now, back to Women of Grace with Johnnette Williams.
Johnnette is taking your phone calls. 1-833-288-EWTN. 1-833-288-3986.
As advertised, we're heading to Cleveland, Ohio. Lynette is a first-time caller. Give her the bell, Sue. There we go. She's listening on our great affiliate there, The Rock in Cleveland. Lynette, you are on with the real Sue Brinkman.
Oh, thank you so much for taking my call. I was inspired to contact you because you mentioned taking back All Hallows Eve. So my little school, so the Catholic school, 20 years ago when it started, we had All Hallows Eve, which was a precursor to All Saints Day, which is what, it was started as. So all the kids would dress up as saints. We had soul bags, which were filled with a lot of candy, so they didn't miss trick or treat. And ideally, every piece of candy they took, they were to pray for a soul in purgatory of a loved one or someone who put a name in the hopper for us. And then we also said the St. Michael the Archangel prayer against what was going to be going on potentially that evening. And we had all kind of games, pin the wings on St. Michael, bowling for angels. We had all kind of, so it was wonderfully themed, and they didn't miss what was going on in the outskirts.
I love that, Lynette. I love it. The soul bags. I think that's so cool. And they had every piece of candy. They have to say a prayer. But you know what it did for them, Lynette? It kind of opened their eyes to what's going on out in the world, out in the culture, and it taught them something. It taught them how to look at the world through a Catholic lens. This is
absolutely.
Yeah, it's so important to be able to do stuff like that. That is really wonderful. I used to do that. I used to do when I had a Little Flowers Catholic Girls Club at my parish.
Oh, beautiful. Yes, exactly.
I love those. And we used to all dress up as a saint, and then they would have to go on the stage because, the little girls, they love the stage.
Yes.
And they would go up on the stage.
About their
so do the big girls, by the way.
Well, I don't know about that. Some of us get a little bit stage fright. But anyway, they would go up there, and we would have to guess who they were. And the
that's
girls
wonderful. We gave hints too. Yeah.
Thank you
and the
so much,
did it.
because you gave us some good ideas. They were good ideas.
You're welcome. God bless.
God bless you.
That is awesome. 833-288-EWTN is our toll-free number. 833-288-3986. Sue, the Magi come up from time to time, which my father always called them the three wise guys. But Rocky, who's watching us on YouTube, he's asking you, weren't the wise men in the New Testament astrologers?
That is such a good question, Rocky. Thank you so much for sending it in here. Yes, absolutely. That we're looking at that as it seems to be a contradiction, right? But really, it's important to understand that before the 17th century, astrology and astronomy were essentially the same thing. So the stars were used both observationally for navigation, which would be astronomy, as well as for divination, such as horoscopes and that, which would be astrology. And that didn't change until the advent of telescopic discoveries, such as those by Galileo. And when he and others found evidence of other celestial bodies that weren't represented in astrological predictions, that cast a doubt then on the validity of astrology, and all that came to a head. And you look at what were the Magi actually doing? The Magi in Matthew 2:2, we read, saw his star at its rising and followed it, which means that they were using it for what? For navigational purposes, not to divine anything. So they were not using it for divination. And these two fields then parted ways. As science developed itself, astronomy went one way and astrology continued in its normal pattern, which is where it has been since, as I had said, the time of the Babylonians. So, but that's a great question. But they were not using it for divination purposes. They were really following the more astronomical trend, which was always around too. Only those two paths did not veer off until really pretty recently, the 17th century. Before they actually parted ways. So, but that's a great question, Rocky. Thank you for letting me get a chance to get that out there.
And if
I'm sure a lot of people wonder that.
If Rocky or anybody else is looking for more than the Reader's Digest version of the answer, where can they find it?
Newage.womenofgrace.com.
Awesome. Next up is Michelle. She is in Rochester, New York, listening on our wonderful affiliate there, Station of the Cross. Michelle, thanks for holding. You're on with Sue Brinkman.
Oh, thank you for taking my call today.
What can we
You're
do for you?
welcome.
Well, I'd like to discuss the satanic root of the pit bull problem. And for those of you who don't really know what the pit bull problem is, I have a few facts that I can tell you about today, and then tell you about the history of the pit bull problem before the process church and the satanic roots of the pit bull problem.
Yeah, I've never heard of that. I've never heard of the of the pit bull and any satanic link from a particular dog to Satan. In fact, he doesn't play favorites. He doesn't play favorites. Satan will use any animal he get his hands on. But yeah, if any animal, Satan favors cats.
Right.
But that's why so many people go after cats, because they think that they're evil. But I don't know anything about that pit bull lobby. I would have to do some research on it. I've never heard of it before.
Thanks so much.
And go ahead.
No, go ahead, Michelle.
And for listeners that want to know more about the satanic roots of the pit bull problem, watch the Pit Bull Lobby on YouTube, which has links to articles and books.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much for the information. 833-288-EWTN. That's our toll-free number. It is a free telephone call anywhere in North America. 833-288-3986. So, I've got a couple of decisions coming up in the near future that I'm going to have to make, Sue, and I was kind of mulling over the notion of maybe finding some sort of an occult psychologist that might be able to help me out there. Bad idea? Good idea?
Bad, bad. Capital B, bad idea. Yeah, this is an actual email that we got from someone, and I want to read it.
Go right ahead.
My friend, it says, this person asks, and all of our questions, by the way, that we put up on our blog, when you write a question, write something to us, it's always just initials. And we will do anonymous if you tell us to. So you're never revealed. But it writes, my friend found out her psychologist is into the occult and is encouraging her to be ordained a priest in her religion. It gets better. The psychologist says my friend will be able to consecrate the Eucharist. My friend, a Catholic, wants nothing to do with her religion, but wonders if she should still see her. The psychologist is her only support right now and is very kind. Is it okay for her to continue? So take a wild guess, Jack, what the answer to that question is. Absolutely not. No. Just stop seeing it, regardless of whether or not she wants to be into her religion or not.
Satan knows where you're vulnerable, and that's where he's going to attack, right?
Exactly, and that's what he's doing to this person. Because look what he says. He's very kind to her. This psychologist is her only support right now. Really, really bad to be dabbling around with anybody, to be seeing any kind of a therapist that relies on any kind of occult art at all. Spirit guides, ascended masters, if they're ever talking about anything like that, just absolutely stop going to see them. And they are out there. I'm not saying there's a lot of them, but they are out there. And a lot of this stuff too, we got to remember when anyone gets into this, Jungian psychiatry, which comes from Carl Jung, got to remember that he was heavily involved in the occult, heavily involved in it. Jung was. He was raised that way. His mother was a medium. He totally rejected Christianity. And our whole view that God transcends creation. He embraced pantheism, that God is all in all. And he claimed to have various spirit entities and that he was able to contact through his active imagination or directed visualization and that kind of stuff. One of them he even named. He called it Philemon, and he describes as a force which is not myself. And I thought, oh wow, that's kind of dangerous. Force that's not yourself, and you're talking to it. So anyway, you have to be very, very careful when you're going to see psychologists, psychiatrists, anyone who's working with your mind. And also in the medical profession in general, you got to be careful that people are not dabbling around in these different things, especially in this whole new age notion of healthcare that you have the power within yourself to heal yourself. And of course, we do have different mechanisms in the body, like the white blood cells, to help us to fight off things. But the new age takes it a lot further than that and makes it seem as if you have a power within you, almost like a divine physician that lives within you, that can rise up and heal you anytime it wants. But you have to learn how to talk to it and communicate with it and be on the right vibration with it. This is the kind of stuff that we read about in the new age. So got to be really careful about that sort of thing too. But absolutely do not go to an occult psychologist, no matter how good they're making you feel. That's what they do, is they make you feel good. I used to go for years to see a psychic. This was before I came back to the Lord. I went for years to a psychic, and the only reason I went to her was because she told me everything that I wanted to hear. So that's why I went, and I went back once a month, and I paid $50 or something an hour for her to talk to me and tell me all kinds of nonsense. And she probably told 11 other people before I got there. And then the one time she set me up with her nephew to go out on a date, and it was a total bomb. It was a date from hell. So I stopped going back to her. That finally made me stop. Not the fact that I was going to this psychic that I thought knew all this stuff. She did my, natal chart, astrology, and all that kind of stuff, and it was all hokey nonsense. But it made me feel good.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of people fall for this stuff, Jack, is because it makes them feel good.
Yep. We want to hear from you. The number is 833-288-EWTN. That's our toll-free number. We're going to pay for the phone call at 833-288-3986. I really liked what Lynette was saying about the tradition in the school she grew up in, the Catholic school she grew up in. And I really liked the things I liked most about what she was saying is that she mimicked what these children's friends that are not walking according to the faith are going to experience in the culture, and made them a holy and the candy and the praying for the poor souls, and made it not just, but it gives them something that they can relate to with the rest of their friends, but puts a better purpose to it. And I thought that was brilliant.
I thought that was too. I mean, it's such a she Christianized. She kind of made the whole thing much more Christian. She brought the Christian faith into it, and showed them, okay, this is how we do Halloween. We actually invented this whole thing about dressing up as saints and all that kind of thing. This is ours, and let's go ahead and celebrate that in fun ways. And she came up with, I love the soul bags.
Yeah.
I wish I had thought about that, because that's fun. You can give them holy cards. Now, when I was little, we would go out for Halloween. We always went to the rectory of our parish, and Father would always give out holy cards. I mean, this is just what we did when I was little. We didn't dress up as anything all that scary. I think Zorro, remember Zorro a long time ago? My brother used to dress up like that, and then he would dress up like that during the year and run around the neighborhood like that. And then when he went around Halloween, he couldn't figure out why everybody knew who he was. It's like, Joey, you've been wearing that costume for like 3 years now. But anyway, but it was so much more innocent then. And we all went around in groups. There's like big throngs of kids, and we would all hold hands and walk around from house to house. And it was just wonderful. You would have to do tricks and different things now they just throw the candy at you, and that's the end of it. But I don't know. Halloween, there's a lot of people who don't want to get involved in it at all. And I can see that point of view as well.
Well, the thing, it just occurred to me as you were talking, the thing I think I really liked about the things that Lynette had to share was she didn't isolate the Catholic kids from the rest of society, but she really kind of put them on top of the heap with the rest of the kids in the society.
Absolutely, but she gave them that Catholic lens.
Yeah.
And that's something that a psychologist had talked to me about years ago. She said, don't just say, no, you can't watch this show to a child. Watch the show with the child. I mean, if it's something that's acceptable, watch it with them and then show them what is wrong about it. Because that teaches them how to develop a Catholic lens, so that they can now, once they leave your house and they're no longer under your supervision, they're going to know how to look at the world through a Catholic lens. And I thought that was such a brilliant tactic to take with children. And that's what she would go around. She would teach that in parishes. She would teach parents how to do that. And, rather than just saying, no, don't do it, explain it to them. This is catechesis. Catechesis begins at home. We can't always be saying, oh, the church they don't catechize anymore. Well, what about you? Do you catechize? This is the question we need to ask ourselves. We should do that with our children. We should really do that so that they understand these things and they don't fall for stuff that sounds odd and weird. I don't believe, I have learned so much about my faith, Jack, just by working in the New Age.
And researching, yeah.
Yes. I mean, we had a blog not long ago. A question said, shed some light on twin flames. Is it possible in the eyes of the church to have a twin flame? I thought, what the heck is a twin flame?
That's exactly what I was thinking when you said it.
Yeah. What is that? A twin flame, and this is now real. This is a real thing out there, is based in a belief that two persons share the same soul. Now, although it's
that's bad theology.
Exactly. Not a soulmate. Soulmates is just someone you feel like a connection to, based on similar beliefs or experiences. But a twin flame is someone that you believe is actually the other half of yourself. And it's a concept that's based in the belief that the soul can incarnate into two separate bodies. Now, anyone with a rudimentary knowledge of Catholicism and Christianity should know right off the bat that that simply is not true. That simply is not true. There are not two souls in every body. But this is a big movement. It started out by Elizabeth Care Prophet. She was a founder of a New Age organization known as the Church Universal and Triumphant. And she actually bought this from Greek mythology, and she kind of repackaged it. And it comes from Greek theology, where they say that humans were originally made with two faces, two arms, two legs, and that one day the gods began to fear that they were too powerful. And they decided to split them in two, thus creating the human form and then this, two different ones. And thereafter, humans were doomed to spend the rest of their lives searching for their other half. This is the kind of stuff that's on the internet. And I mean, if we had that basic catechesis, we would see through that right away. And even if it's just to say, maybe I need to write to Sue over there and Johnnette over at Women of Grace and ask about this. That's the start. That's great. That's perfect. You want to do that. If you've got any kind of Johnnette calls them checks in the spirit.
Yeah.
When you're reading something like that, just shoot us an email and ask us about it. It's, send it to newage@womenofgrace.com. That's our email address. It comes right to me and I'll answer that question. So, things like this, I guess that's why we're here, to answer these kinds of questions. But really, and they have it all, this whole twin flame things, all these different ways to realize that you've met your twin flame. Like, what are the signs that you met a twin flame? It's, very elaborate and obviously very wrong. But here you have people out there searching for their twin flame.
Distractions. That's all any of it is. One thing that is not a distraction, we've been bringing you the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass from the very beginning when Mother Angelica started this network back in the early 80s and on into the radio days now. 7 a.m. Eastern Time every day. Actually, that would be 8 o'clock Eastern Time every day, Monday through Monday. Every day except Good Friday, we'll bring you the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass right here on EWTN radio and television. Sue, there was a group of women who used to meet at a parish, the parish that my late wife Susie and I belonged to when I entered the church. And our pastor was a wonderful holy man, Father Joe McDonald of happy memory. And but he took a group to Medjugorje every year. And so they would get together on Tuesday nights when Mirjana's weekly, the recounting of her weekly apparition would happen, and they would discuss these things. And they would spend a lot of time on websites like Spirit Daily, and they would talk about this speculation about things like the 3 days of darkness and what have you. And I once asked one of the ladies, I said, so are you only going to behave the way you ought to if you think it's the end is right now?
Oh, wow.
Or are you going to...
Great question.
Yeah, why would, so we spend so much time getting preoccupied with that when we really should be preoccupied with what you mentioned earlier. The only thing we ought to care about is our particular judgment.
Exactly, exactly. And like you said, that word distraction, that's exactly what it is. It's a distraction to take you away from thinking about what you really need to be focused on. And it's how surrendered are you to the will of God? You know, no matter how many beeswax candles you have in that house, if at the end of time the Lord's telling you that you're going to come home, you're going home. It doesn't matter how many candles you got in the house. And are you able to accept God's will in all those occasions? And we want to say, of course, yes to that. But when you really stop and think about it, you start to think, well, can you condition that somehow for me? Define your will. So you have to really spend a lot of time doing that and learning that really what you need to spend your time on is, as you said, looking at your own end time. And how prepared are you for that day when the Lord is going to call you home? And if you want to do some things to make yourself feel better about the 3 days of darkness, that's fine. But do it and be done with it. Don't sit and read all the websites about it. Don't get yourself so engrossed in it that you begin to experience anxiety and internal upset. The minute that interior life of yours becomes upset, and here's something that we're learning about in our book study, with Fire Within, boy, that's the way to shut yourself off from being able to hear the Holy Spirit. When you're all churned up inside with fear and anxiety and you're anxious about things, that's when you can't hear him anymore. You can't hear his subtle voice. Don't get upset about it. Same thing with the church. We all know things that are going on in the church that are very bad. I love church history, so I don't get as upset about it for two reasons. One, because I've read a lot about it, and secondly, because I'm a Carmelite, and my natural instinct is to pray, not to get upset. I just pray because I believe God's the only one who can help that. So, but, I've read a lot about church history, and we've been in such horrible places in the past. I mean, worse than this, far worse than this. And God has always prevailed. Jesus has always prevailed, and our church is still here. So it kind of, once you get that perspective, it takes a lot of the fear out of it. And I am content to just take that, to church with me into my prayer life and to just pray for what's going on in the synod, for what the Pope supposedly said here, what this cardinal said there. But I just don't get dragged into it. Yeah. I don't get dragged into it. I just pray.
Very good. Good advice. Sue, thanks so much, as always, for being so gracious with your time. On behalf of my lovely wife, Johnnette Williams, keep her in your prayers. Hopefully she will be back with you again on tomorrow. And our producer and social media maven, Mr. Jeff Burson. And our call screener, Mr. Matt Gubensky. Thanks so much for joining us today on Women of Grace Live. Keep it right here on most of these EWTN radio stations. Take Two with Jerry and Debbie coming up next. Until we get together tomorrow, God bless.
Hi, I'm Debbie Georgiani. Adam Bly and I invite you to join us as we tackle the spirit world on EWTN.